I want to turn to Hayden Talbot now and talk about operator performance measures. Josh, is there any, do you have to introduce this at all? No.
No, I think we're
all right.
Hey, Shirley, I have a question for you. How does this...
David, I want to keep us on schedule, so you're going to have a chance of public testimony to come up, and as part of that, I'm delighted to have you ask Shirley questions, but I want to go to Hayden now.
Good evening. My name is Hayden Talbot, and I have been with the organization for about 30 years. Started as a bus operator, drove for 13 years, became an assistant manager for several years, and then was able to be promoted into a station manager position, which I was in for a number of years until very recently, when I was privileged to become the Director of Transportation Operations at TriMet. So a little bit about me. I've been asked to give a brief summary of the ways that we, as managers, transportation managers, monitor and respond to operator performance. First, I'd like to just give sort of an overview on our approach. And then I would like to introduce in a little bit more detail some of the areas of performance that we track. So on the approach side, managers monitor different areas of operator performance on an ongoing basis. And out of that information, we respond to employees in various ways that you're all, I'm sure, very familiar with. We have recognition programs. We also have I would say, a more focused interest in what I would call sort of the intervention or support side of our operation. And this is really to identify employees that may be having difficulties, that haven't reached real performance problems in a disciplinary fashion or in a counseling fashion, but we're getting hints that maybe they're having trouble out there. So we get with the employee and try to do sort of the intervention side, find out what's going on, and attempt to get the employee some assistance before they have a real performance problem out there. So that's really a major part of our orientation now in transportation. Out of that also comes training, coaching and counseling. The majority of our interactions with employees is in those areas. We have a lot of interactions on a daily basis, a lot of problem solving, coaching, counseling. We set expectations, and finally, if there is an improvement over time, then we have the disciplinary process that we use. Now, the operator profile, which has been mentioned, I'm not sure if you have copies of that. Is that correct? I would like to refer to that specifically because it captures a number of the areas of performance, operator performance, that we monitor on a regular basis. If you have specific questions about the use of the profile, I'd be happy to answer those as well, but I'm using the profile as just sort of a place for us to go with a convenient summary of areas of performance review. So if you have that document and you'd like to follow along with that, profile mentions what we call supervisor observation reports. These are reports that come in from our field supervisors who are out in the field, and if they observe violations of our operating policy, they will fill out documents that come into the managers, and the managers will respond, interact with the employee, and take the appropriate action. There's also areas in the accidents and incidents follow-up, which we received a little bit of information earlier on from Steve's report on that process. There is an accident policy that we follow, and all operators go through that. We also track attendance. We have a separate policy that governs our actions with that. We have, on the recognition side, safe driving awards, which are called attention to in various formats, and particularly in this profile, we have an opportunity to give attention to this kind of a recognition to an employee when they get that. Also, when they earn these awards, we try to get them to them personally and congratulate them. And when we have our recognition, our annual recognition period or week at TriMet, we also call specific attention to safe driving and folks that have safe driving records. I will say in my operation at TriMet, I have found in interacting with employees that safe driving is probably one of those values that operators take very seriously. Those who do it have a great deal of pride in it. And I've found that across the board. Yes.
No, I'm sorry.
Are all these a 1 year period of time, like including attendance?
Yes.
Because isn't there like 80 hours in a full-time year, and you've got so the attendance was confusing me.
Could I ask that we go back to that
Sure.
after I've kind of gone through this? Then we can look at the profile if you have any particular questions. Also in the profile, it mentions awards and qualifications. So we call attention to the different other recognition programs. We have an Operator of the Month, Master Operator, other miscellaneous awards that go along throughout the year and that we interact with employees on. There's also training information, which shows the history of the training received. And again, training is something that goes on throughout the year. People are sent to training for various reasons, and all of that's captured in an annual basis. And then finally, there's an on-time performance part to this profile, which is a general overview and pure comparison based on our current BDS information. Let me add a couple things, or at least, yes, a couple sources of information that are not mentioned on this that we also respond to employees on. Customer comments come in. We get many customer comments. They're handled right now in conjunction with a service improvement process that we have. And that information initiates follow-up in different types. There is individual follow-up for sort of, particularly for compliments. We give compliments to employees who are doing a good job out there and their customers are letting us know that. We also contact employees for individual complaints when there's a problem-solving aspect to it. We feel like we can fix this real quickly. Classic example of that is maybe the bus stop that isn't quite as clear when it's dark and someone's new on a route and they're missing somebody, and so we get that kind of complaint. We want to get right to the operator and say, hey, you got to watch for that spot. So that's sort of problem-solving piece. Also look at patterns, and that brings us to a point where we're looking at folks who are beginning to show that there's evidence of performance issues, and so the patterns key us to take some action. A good example of that, actually kind of a combination of things, as we recently had an employee who had an incident in which one of our TriMet employees observed that they thought they weren't driving as safe as they should be. And they brought it to our attention. We pulled the data pack. We reviewed it. Training actually brought it down to us. Alan and a member of our safety team, Tommy Gilbreth. We sat down with the manager at the garage where the operator was. She reviewed it and said we need to bring him right in and go over this with him. Went over the videotape with the operator, made a big impact on the operator. They were affected by it when they saw what the tape showed. As a result of that, we did some kind of intervention training to review their defensive driving skills, and my understanding to date is that we have some pretty good indicators that they've taken that to heart. So that's another whole source of intervention for us. There's also times in which we get complaints of a serious nature in which we act very quickly and take appropriate action, not only just counseling, but if there's discipline involved, we will do that as well. A couple of other things that I would mention is that we get feedback from training instructors in the training department that comes to us that generates our actions to follow up with employees. And we also have, as sort of the illustration I just gave, the ad hoc observations by other TriMet employees that come to us and say, we've observed something of concern, and we can follow up with it. So that's essentially kind of an overview of our performance management piece. So at this point, I'd be happy to take any further questions about the profile if you have them.